In section 7.2 we want to talk about the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is really nice because we can immediately solve for the x values just by plugging in values for a, b, and c in the formula. We have to first write our equation in standard form. Once our equation is in standard form, the a is whatever's in front of x squared, the b is the number in front of x, and the c is the constant. We need to memorize this quadratic formula. Looking at our first quadratic equation, we see that it is already in standard form. All of my variables are, all of my terms are on one side of the equation, and I can look and see that my a would be 1, my b would be -4, and my c is -12. We use just the numbers in front. We do not include variables as the values for a, b, and c. Now we just plug it into our quadratic formula. The complete quadratic formula is x is equal to minus b. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave parentheses in place of where those a, b's, and c's are. Make sure that you know all the signs. Make sure that you know the formula. Now we're going to go in and plug our values in. It's minus b, so b is -4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -4 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -12, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Once we have plugged everything into the formula, we just need to simplify. -4 is a +4, plus or minus the square root. -4 squared is 16, minus 4 times 1 times -12. When I multiply all of these together, we get a +48. We divide all of that by 2. We get 4 plus or minus the square root of 64 divided by 2, and we want to start to simplify our solution. So we want to figure out what those three numbers are. The constant in front of the plus or minus, we want to simplify underneath the radical, and we want to know the number in our denominator. Once we get this far, we know the square root of 64 is 8. And 4 and 8 are like terms, so we want to separate . We want to separate it and write it out in two different ways. 4 plus 8, 4 minus 8, because those are like terms. And then we want to simplify. We have two solutions here for x, and as we go to simplify, on the top we have 12 divided by 2, which is 6. And on the top of this fraction, we get -4 divided by 2, which is -2. So we get two different solutions directly calculated by plugging in the values for a, b, and c into our formula. In our next example, we're going to use the formula again. Now we see that we have fractions, and we don't want to work with fractions in our quadratic formula. My suggestion is to immediately multiply by the LCD. And the LCD here would be 6. We're going to multiply each of our terms by 6 and reduce. So here, 3 goes into 6 twice. We're left with 4x squared. Negative x times 6 is just -6x. And 6 and 6 cancel, so we're left with -1. Now this is not in standard form yet because we need all of the terms to be on the same side, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides. And once we have added 1 to both sides, now we are actually in standard form. And now we will plug our values into our formula. First, let's decide what is the a, b, and the c. Well, the a is whatever's in front of x squared, so that's 4. Our b is -6, and our c is a +1. So let's plug into our formula. X is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. I'm going to put parentheses in to leave space. Then we're going to go through and we're going to fill in Everywhere we have a b, we're going to put a -6. Everywhere that I have an a, I'm going to put a 4, and c is 1. So we're going to divide here by 2a, which is 4. And now we're going to simplify. X is equal to +6 plus or minus square root 36 minus 16 all over 8. X is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 20 all over 8. Now once again, we want to get these three numbers, and then we want to start to simplify as much as we can. 20 is 2 times 2 times 5. We have 2 2's, so we can circle, cross them out, and bring one of them out to the front. So we have x is equal to 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 5 all over 8. We talked about how we always want to reduce our fractions as much as possible. In the top we see that we have a common factor of 2. We can think about pulling that out, just like we would factor it out of a binomial. Now we have a monomial and a monomial out front with something in common. 2 goes into 8 4 times, so our final answer in the reduced form will be 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 divided by 4. In our last example, we have a quadratic equation that is not in standard form, and we have a couple of steps that we have to do to get it into standard form. We want to FOIL and then distribute the 2. So I'm going to FOIL first. That gives me x squared minus 8x plus 15. Then we're going to distribute in my 2. We get 2x squared minus 16x plus 30 is equal to -13. And the last thing that I want to do to get it into standard form is add 13 to both sides. So most of the work here is trying to get this into standard form. Once we have standard form, we will go and use our quadratic formula. We need to know first what is A, and what is B, and what is our C. And now we will plug these values into our quadratic formula. So first I'm going to write out the formula without any letters. And then we're going to go in and plug in negative b there, b squared, 4ac all over 2a, and then we're going to simplify. So we get x is equal to 16, negative and a negative give me a positive, plus or minus the square root 16 squared. 16 times 16 turns out to be 256, minus, and we multiply 4 times 2, which gives me 8. 8 times 43 gives me 344. All over 4. We want to keep simplifying underneath our square root. We end up with x is equal to 16 plus or minus the square root of -88 all over 4. We have the square root of a negative number, so we know that is going to give us an I. Let's go ahead and take -88 over here to the side and split it up. We're going to split up the positive part from the negative part. We get our I. What's the largest perfect square that divides evenly into 88? That would be 4. Leaves us with 22. So we end up 2 times the square root of 22 times I. We're going to plug that back in. And once again, we notice that we have a common factor of 2 throughout. Actually, in this example, we have the I, so I would like to write it in the a plus bi form. So let's go ahead and directly go ahead and split up the 4 to be underneath each term separately. That way we can keep the positive, or the real part, separate from the imaginary part. So so my real and my imaginary part, and then reduce each fraction separately. 16 divided by 4 is 4, plus or minus, we have a common factor of 2 here, so we get square root of 22 divided by 2 times I.